Okay. Boom, boom, boom. What did we talk about last night?
Hi, everybody. It's Susie Miller, the Better Relationship Coach, and I'm committed to helping you create better personal and professional relationships in 30 days or less. And we are here on our very last blab of boomers and millennials understanding each other. This episode is Millennials as Parents, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Brad Szollose, the Millennial Expert, keynote speaker, author of award-winning Liquid Leadership, on and on and on with his accolades. Brad, why don't you give us a recap of where we've been up until
It has been a journey, hasn't it, Susie? Everybody wanted to get on, and we were jumping in and out and everything. And you know, thank you to Blab, even though it's in beta, and we've stopped and we've started and we've tried to figure this technology out. It actually is very easy, and Susie and I are at least boomers who know how to use this stuff. It's still in beta. Let's be honest. Okay. So anyways, I just wanted to, we're going to go through everything. We talked about why this is an issue, how boomers actually raised millennials to be different, the three main influences that created millennials, and we might even talk about the fourth. We haven't even dove into the fourth, but there were three major influences, and one was Star Wars and how science fiction became science fact through talking toys and interactive devices and things like that. Second thing was the video games came into the household, changed the brains of a new generation and how they operate. They multitask. Everything has to be interactive. They can't sit and watch television. They have to have it interact. And this has affected business. And then the third big piece was child-centric parenting and child-centric curriculum and teaching at the school level, which flattened the hierarchy. So you have a new generation that doesn't see anybody older and wiser or anybody who has more experience as an authority figure, but a peer. So this has changed everything on planet Earth. And then we started delving into how the world has flipped around, how the politics on the playground are very different. This is a generation that was exposed to bullying bad. You can't hit anybody back, even if they drive you crazy. Okay. Then we have the selfie generation. We're talking about, you know, how we've lost, maybe we haven't lost touch with it. It's just that boomers were trained one way: be quiet, earn your way, don't say anything. And now we have a generation that's always going, has the tools at their disposal to just chat and talk and do whatever they want. And it looks like everybody's bragging and doing all these silly things. It's just a new platform. And now you can capture those conversations that were always there, but we never had a way of seeing them. Now we can see them, hear them, touch them, and everything else. And here we're brought up finally. I think I've covered everything. I'm exhausted at this point, but we're now covering what's going to happen when millennials become parents and Generation Z become parents. What's going to happen? Because everything's changed.
It is. So we're going to do a few things here. We're going to talk a broad overview of a few things, and then we're going to open up the lines. We've actually invited a friend of both of ours, Jessica Rhodes, on the show to talk about that. She is a millennial, an atypical millennial in some ways. She is also a parent. There are ways that I feel like she meets exactly what I think millennial parents are. And so I'm going to go over some of those things as a relationship expert and coach. I have seen these things in the millennials I work with, especially already successful ones, as they are cutting through what we boomers did, which was wait and work our way up. They are just hitting the ground running and hitting the top. So here's a couple things to know about millennials as parents. Right. Number one, millennials were under the spotlight since they were born. They are, before they were born, you know, we had ultrasounds. You know, they're the first generation raised with the reality of 9/11, security. They have, you know, been very open-minded, community-oriented. So they were raised in the era of new ideas, new possibilities, very much that whole, we've talked about this before, postmodern generation that there was no absolute anything except for possibility. So that's one thing. Right. Another big piece of millennial differences is they have a really great perspective. They don't hide from tough situations. They did not grow up in a world where they had the Great Depression generation. They did have a bit of the recession as an economic reality, but they don't hide from tough situations. They're very optimistic and hopeful. You know, they embrace difficulties. They are a generation of leaders who follow their hearts, but they also engage their brains. I think this next piece, number 3, is one of the biggest differences with millennials and boomers or Gen Xers. Let's go ahead and make that delineation. Millennials believe in themselves in a way that I've seen no other generation before them believe in themselves at a very young age. So this generation understands dreams and plans. They're innovators, they're self-sustaining, they're independent thinkers, and they're not afraid to take unconventional ways and choices and make choices. And I've seen this in Jess a lot. I know we were at a business conference together where we both spoke, and I remember looking at her at one point when we were on a panel together, and she answered a question, and I thought, wow, for her young age, she has such a sense of self-confidence that I didn't have at that age. And I love that about millennials. I think at some level, boomers struggle with that, and they feel like millennials should earn that. And I applaud millennials for having that and think boomers should just get over it. You know, another thing about millennials is they believe in empathy. They're very much activists. They're very community and global oriented, community gardens, fair trade. You know, they're very much global, and traditions and cultures of different parts of the world are very important to them. So empathy and activism is a big deal. I think that's a huge thing. Millennials are also not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're not reactionary to their parents like we were. Boomers, we reacted to our parents. We didn't want to be like them. And so I don't find that millennials are having that blowback. They're like, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. So we're going to kind of do what we think. You know, they don't have that. I hate my parents. Some of them are friends with their parents, but they also have a pretty clear understanding of what they don't want to be like, but it's not reactionary. It's very responsive. I also think that millennials are very resilient. Millennials are very resilient. They don't have that perfectionist mentality quite so much. They're not bent on shielding their kids from disappointment. They want to give them skills. They're not going to be the trophy generation. You know, what's interesting is that millennials value happiness, experience, and not stuff. They really want their kids to be integrated in their life. I've seen a lot of millennials who are living in the city and doing community and co-op kind of engagement in lives. A lot of millennials take their kids everywhere. Their lifestyles have not been altered. There's no move to the suburbs when they have kids because they want to have their kids in their life. So it's going to be a different generation of kids that we raise. Those are some of the like major tenets that I've seen over and over again, both in my experience and my research for how millennials are going to be different as parents. Thoughts on that, Brad? Poor internet signal, Brad. Brad says Susie's audio is in and out. Jess says the world will end. Jessica Rhodes, can you hear me? It's fine to me. All right, Brad's internet's out is what I've got. Want me to call in? Brad's joining again. All right. Hold on a second, Jess. Let me get Brad in first. I'm going to kick you out, Brad, and we'll try you again. Call in again, Brad. Okay, so those are some things about millennials that I think... There you are. What happened?
I have no idea. And I can't even see you.
Okay.
You're not even on.
I can see me, and Jessica could hear me, so it was just you. We're going to bring Jess on in a minute. But that's a pretty good outline of where millennials are really different. Yeah. And so as parents, I feel like they have, honestly, a much better start than I did as a parent. Well, you know, they're not neurotic.
Let me jump in here.
Go ahead.
You know, part of the reason you have a job, Susie, is because boomers, their parents pounded into them what they wanted them to be. They didn't let them choose their way in life. And, oh, isn't it wonderful? He's playing with his poop. Maybe he'll be an artist. You know, they didn't do that. They smacked you, you know, when we were kids. So we grew up and we kind of said, we're not going to, all the experts told us, don't hit your kid. Don't make them conforming into this. Let them discover all these new things. And to boomers, when I use this language, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? But that's what happened with the next generation. They're allowed to form their own opinions. They're allowed to be courageous without getting smacked down. They're allowed to do these things. And I think, you know, we had 5 things that we listed that were scary that millennials have. Like, they have no shame and they have no judgments. There's no right or wrong. It's just, you know, the world's going to come to end, as Jessica said. But I think the great positives that millennials bring to the table. And by the way, boomers, we raised millennials to be exactly like this. And I think that the first thing I have to say about millennials is they're courageous. I think they're courageous. They take on things that we would probably shy away from. And
Absolutely.
They fight the good fight. You know, they're defending of people who are poor. They're defending of people of all races, creeds, colors, backgrounds, gender, sexual orientation. They defend that. And
they're very much into advocacy.
Absolutely. And then the non-judgment, I think, is the most important, powerful thing that they bring to the table. They don't like anybody judging other people and let everybody be who they are. I think that's a wonderful thing as well. And I think they care. The caringness towards others is built in. And I think that comes from us boomers trying to get things to change and not being able to. You know, it really was a tough fight for us. I don't know if you know that. You know, you try to help somebody and then you're called a liberal. You know, I'm not a liberal, but, you know, I try to be a good person. And that's part of it. And I think that this generation gives a damn. They give a damn. So those are just three. We'll probably figure out the other two as we go through this.
Well, I think the other one that I think is really big that we hit on was they have a profound sense of confidence. And it's not a false confidence. It's not a facade. And as much as we joke about the child-centric parenting that resulted in the selfie generation, it also resulted in a sense of self-concept, of knowing themselves, of self-discovery, that I think millennials, as much as, you know, the boomers, especially in the business world that you talk about, rail against, there is a sense of I can do it, I know who I am, and if you don't like it, that's tough. And it really has made them, you know, excel in their advocacy, in their business ventures. And you know, I broached this at the very beginning, but it's almost, I mean, I admire it, but I do think there's a bit of boomer jealousy. You know, there isn't this I've got to earn my way, you know, I've got to earn my way to the top. I've got to make sure so-and-so likes me. You know, they don't have that same approval addiction that boomers had or have because they were not raised to earn their way to the top, to earn the approval. They were approved because they existed. And I think that is a game changer for millennials, both in the marketplace, but also in the home. I think as parents, it's a huge thing because they're not going to raise their kids to make sure that the community or the Joneses think their kids are good. And here's a great example that I'll give from my own life. I'll never forget, you know, when my kids were growing up, there was this season of, you know, getting, you know, dressed just right. And they had these little jumpers with the cute little buttons and the patent leather shoes and the little ruffly socks. And they always went out looking, you know, just right because, of course, their dress and the way they looked reflected on me and how, you know, what a good mother I was. And that mattered what people thought of me. You know, so fast forward to, you know, years later when one of my friends who's a millennial was taking her kids out and she had her kids in these same cute little jumpers, but they had on these funky color boots and, you know, striped, totally non-matching shirts. And we met for coffee and she said, you know, they dress themselves. And I thought about this and I looked at her and I said, oh, your kids are going to be so much better adjusted than mine because you let them be creative. And she's like, I really, you know, in Starbucks, people are, you know, the old ladies are looking at her and she's like, I don't care what they think. And in that moment, I thought, gosh, I wish I had that level of confidence. And you know, we were not raised to think what we thought was good enough. We were looking for someone to validate us. And millennials were validated as kids. What does Johnny think? What does Sally want? Oh, that's wonderful. Look at, you know, whatever you think is wonderful. And I think the upside of that level of parenting is we've got millennials who think, I'm pretty awesome. You don't like it, tough. And I think that's a big piece of why their generation is going to change the world even more. So would you agree? Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You know, just look in corporations. When I work in corporations, I see boomers all the time. And the one thing I have to teach the boomers that are different about millennials, because they always complain that millennials, they get their work done and then they sit around and do whatever they want to leave. Well, boomers were taught to look busy. That doesn't mean we're getting any work done, but we were taught to look busy, look busy, look busy. And guess what? By the time we're 50 years old, we don't know we're doing busy work and we're not really getting anything done. Millennials are the opposite. When they're done with their work, they're not pretending. They're as authentic as you can get. So when they're not working, they're not working. And they don't even know that they're supposed to do something to look like they're busy because the boss might fire them for not looking busy. That's going on inside the head of every boomer, you know. And so I don't know if it's jealousy or is a complete misunderstanding of the next generation, which boomers raised. And now
I think it's both because I think we have a sense of when we condemn, it is a misunderstanding. And I think there's that idea of let's create understanding. But honestly, I think there is that element of, man, why couldn't we do that? Man, why did I have to work that hard? Or we had to do our time, they should do our time. Or I did what I was told. Why do they get to think about what they want to do? And maybe this is me. I don't think it's me projecting. I think it's working in the relationship side of things. I think it's 25 years of dealing with people and feelings and thoughts where people come to me and admit, I'm thrilled that my kid is ahead and making six figures at 30 years old. And at 30 years old, I was still scraping by. And so there's this kind of tension, and there's an excitement and there's a frustration that I didn't get that. And so I want to look at boomers and go, so get on with it. Like, let's create our life. Let's just name it and move on. So, I think there is a piece of that makes the difference. Now, let's talk about, you mentioned a term, and I'm totally blanking on it, about what they call millennial parents who don't want to grow up. What's that term, Brad? Yeah, talk about that a minute.
If you remember, there was a Star Trek episode where they visited this planet and there were kids on the planet playing, and they called anybody who was a grown-up a grup, which is short for grown-up. And what it turns out is these kids were 200 years old. And as soon as somebody began to slowly go into the teen years, they would die. So anybody who passed into that realm, they made fun of them. They called them a grup. And they were a teenager, basically. So now we have this term being used, especially in the inner cities, somebody who's 40-something or maybe late 30s, early 40s, and they're riding skateboard to work, and they take their kids to, Lincoln Park concerts, and they hang out at the trendy vegan places to eat, and, they spend their time carrying their children and everything, and everybody's progressive and cool. They're calling them grups. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a fun term. But if you notice, like when my dad was my age, he looked like an old man. And I don't look that way in my 50s. And Susie, look at you. You look fantastic in your 50s. We don't age the same. Right. So we don't have these same delineations of at 30 you should grow up, at 40 you should be a man, and at 50, you should be getting ready for retirement, bucko. These don't exist. It's all blending now. Right. Blending. Right.
Well, and it's interesting to me. One of the things, I remember my mom telling me I should dress like a mom now. But the interesting thing, a couple of things about millennials as parents, one of the things in the chat box that I love was Brittany said, I always think how adorable how many kids get to walk through the grocery store with their butterfly wings on now. And I wrote in tulle skirts, whereas we were taught to dress a certain way and be appropriate, and there were rules. And so I do like that breaking of the rules and that sense of pushing the limits. And Brittany talks about people in their 20s making six figures. One of the things I think is interesting is with the digital age, two things that are coming up a lot in the research is that a lot of millennial parents are living closer to their extended family, whereas we wanted to get away from our parents, visit on holidays, again, the reason I'm in business, that dysfunctional, let's get away from them, let's draw some boundaries. And now there's a bit of coming back. The other piece that I think is really huge that we need to address is this idea of there's so much interconnectedness. There's so much conversation. People are raising their children with online support groups, online information, mommy blogs, blog her, mommy groups of support, where you're learning about how to raise your kid. WebMD. From all over the world, as opposed to, the few people that I might have asked for mommy advice. So Jessica Rhodes says, I'm in a ton of mommy Facebook groups. Let's go ahead and open up the lines and have some, if you are a millennial and you are a parent, let's pop. I meet moms on purpose. Yeah, okay, so Jess says, every Tuesday morning I meet with moms on purpose, in person. When I was a mom, it was the other moms, the 2 or 3 other moms who had kids the same age as mine. We met on the playgrounds, we did our errands together, we hung out. That were my sanity. Because moms, we didn't work. We were home trying to figure out what to do with our kids, our brains, because we didn't work. We weren't supposed to work. Good moms stayed home with their kids. So if you're a millennial and you're a mom, let's hop in. I know Jess is here.
Jessica.
Hi, Jess.
Hey.
Accept her. It takes a minute to adjust because the signal starts to.
Hi, Jess. So glad you're here. Talk to us.
Jess.
Woohoo! Talk to us about being a millennial and a mom.
I feel like I've been psychoanalyzed for the last 15 minutes. In a good way, though. They were all good things. I didn't mean that negatively.
All right, I'll let it slide.
No, as you're describing, I'm like, yeah, that's like me, and yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we are kind of like that. Yeah. I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Well, and the reason I do that also is because we have boomers listening, and I think what Brad brought to me for this project was he speaks at events and the business events, and they come up and they go, "Gosh, now you're helping me understand my kid." And so my part in this is like, okay, yeah, let's talk about the relationship aspect of not understanding your kid and how do I get along with my kid. And I love millennials, and we realized last night, Brad and I are more like cuspers and more Gen Xers. I think if we can understand each other both ways, I feel like if boomers could understand millennials, but also millennials could understand boomers, there'd be a whole lot more we could accomplish together. So I've said early on, you're not the typical millennial in that you are not the egocentric, waiting to find themselves. But you are a millennial in a lot of ways. So talk to us about being a millennial, being confident, having that idea of, I can take on the world, get out of my way.
So, gosh, I mean, that's a big question. I mean, a lot of what you were saying was really resonating. Like I'm different because a lot of my friends who are millennials aren't like me in a lot of different ways. I mean, being a millennial parent and also a business owner, you described me in a lot of different ways in that I take on challenges. I've always been a leader ever since I had my first job. I was always a manager, and whatever job I had, became a director or started my own business. I am overly optimistic. Like when I started my business, you hear the stat, most businesses fail in the first 5 years. And I'm like, yeah, but mine won't. Because, life goes well. I'm just like, that's not going to happen to me.
And millennials are very positive. They're very positive.
Yeah. I mean, when you said like millennials, they take their kids out, like Jamie and I was laughing when you said they don't move out to the suburbs because Jamie and I did that. But our suburbs is in a bay town. So we looked at it as getting towards a nicer area. But yeah, I mean, we don't look at, my husband and I had kids young. I was 25 when Nathan was born, and that's really young compared to a lot of people nowadays. And we kind of laugh about how there's people now, like in our generation, there's people that will have their kids young, but a lot of people will want to build their, careers and travel to Europe and do all this stuff and then have kids like in their late 30s. Mm-hmm. And Jamie and I were like, well, just because we have kids doesn't mean we won't actually like get to do stuff like that. I mean, I probably won't travel to Europe anytime soon, but we still try to do as much as possible, even with kids. It's not like our life is over for the next 18 years.
But that is a bit of an anomaly. That is a bit of an anomaly with millennials. A lot of millennials have made the distinction of pre-kids because they watch their parents have kids early, a lot of them. And so that was the travel, fun time, use their money, do fun stuff. I mean, our daughter's 30 and she's having fun, and then she's going to have kids. It's very planned out. It's very, what do I want to do? Whereas we did what we thought we were supposed to do. And that's really interesting. Yes. Another thing I think that you mentioned that is a very big part of millennial is co-parenting. And I want you to talk about that just because I know you do that. When I was a young mom, one of the things John said to me when we first got married was, I want to be an involved dad like your dad was. And my dad was engaged with us, but he was a typical come home, play with the kids. My mom did all the mom stuff. My dad did the play stuff. And so John, I'll never forget, he would come home from his business. I was home and I'd be like, okay, Kate needs a bath, and then we'll do books and bedtime together. And John one day said, I'm tired. And I was like, I'm tired too. And you said you wanted to do this, and 30 minutes of argument ensued, and my mom was with us. And I was like, I could have had her bathed and been done by now. 30 minutes later, you said you wanted me to help you with this. You don't get close to a kid by starting to hang out with them when they're 2 years old. Fine, he did the bath, whatever. And while he was doing a bath, my mom comes up to me, she goes, Susie, he had a hard day at work. You're a stay-at-home mom. You really should have all that done by the time he comes home. And I looked at her and I was like, Mom, he wanted me to make her, help him be close to the kid. This is how you do that. It doesn't start when you're 2, And she was like appalled that I would, expect it, argue with him, all that kind of stuff. And it was so funny because, 2 years later when she goes running to the door, Daddy, he was excited. And co-parenting was not, something my mom did, something she, to this day, when I'm on the phone with her and John comes home, she'll say, I better let you go so you can get dinner ready. just was a foreign concept. And so fighting with him
what is this, Dick
to
Van
get our
Dyke?
kids, to help with our kids was a big deal. And so a couple months later, we were at a wedding when Kate was about 2 years old, and one of our good friends' wives was pregnant. And he looked at our friend Barry and he said, "Hey, no matter what happens, have your wife fight with you to get involved with that kid from day one." And I had this big smile on my face because suddenly it made all those fights worth it. But, that's look at what I did versus I happen to be friends with Jess and I know about their co-parenting. Share a little bit about.
It's so funny because when you just do something a certain way in your family, you don't think like, oh, we're so unique and special. It's like, well, this is just how we do things. But yeah, Jamie and I never even described it as co-parenting. And now that you say that, it makes sense. And I honestly can't even speak for a lot of my friends are not exactly like this in their parenting, but Jamie and I are very much like everything is very equal. He has a job where he works from home and can make his own schedule. I have my own business where I now work outside of the home, but we very much every day is like we try to balance all of the kid work and the housework and the work stuff as much as possible. And sometimes we laugh like when we take on the traditional roles, like Jamie's outside mowing the lawn and I'm inside cooking dinner. But we try to switch that up. Like sometimes I want to mow the lawn and he wants to cook. But we balance it. We take turns, who's doing bedtime. I got lucky. I married a guy who was a nanny in college, so he's really good with kids. I've got friends, our nanny, actually, her ex-husband, she's like, you have no idea how lucky you are to have Jamie. My ex-husband was just never, even when the kids were little, he just was never really into kids, even his own. And I didn't really realize how kind of unique that is and special to have a husband and a father to your kids who's actually really good with kids. And so that makes it easy.
Wow.
Well, I always would say when I would go out with my girlfriends and they would say, "Hey, my husband's babysitting the kids," and I would go, "No, he's not babysitting. He's fathering. He's parenting." And that was a big pet peeve of mine.
I was talking to my neighbor about that, and he said, he's like, I'm out with my kids, and someone said, like, "Oh, you're babysitting." He goes, "I'm their dad. I'm not babysitting.
Right.
I'm with my kids."
Right.
He was so angry. I'm like, rightfully so.
But what's interesting is the idea of co-parenting versus divorce parenting is, hey, Lindsay, so glad you're here, is the idea of that traditional role of this is what the mom does, this is what the dad does. So co-parenting versus divorced co-parenting is that idea of shared responsibilities for the kids. Whereas, when I was growing up, the mom did these jobs, the dad did these jobs. There was much more traditional, kind of like Brad said, those Dick Van Dyke roles. And as much as, he was being a dad, not babysitting his kids, he was still, we were an anomaly in our group of friends where John was very involved with our kids. And that was a big deal. Interestingly enough, a lot of research is showing, and Jess, you can comment on this, as can Lindsay, because you fit into the millennial. So Lindsay, pop on here. Try to grab a seat, Lindsay. It says that for millennials, a lot of millennials, their kids are more important than their marriage. And I'm going to give you two things here. One of the biggest complaints I get with my couples, both execs and entrepreneurs, is that the wives were very consumed with their kids, helicopter moms, they hit empty nest, and they have no relationship. But at the same time, I'm hearing it on the backside as well, that a lot of millennials are very involved with their kids and their marriages are suffering. How do you feel about that, Jess?
That's a good question. A really good topic because it is, I actually have a clear memory of when Nathan was a baby. Nathan's my 2.5-year-old. I have a 3-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. When Nathan was a baby, I was listening to this podcast called One Extraordinary Marriage, and they talk a lot on that show about, how your marriage, you need to love your spouse more than your kids. It sounds crazy, but you have to prioritize them because the kids are going to move out and then you two are left together. And I've learned this from you, Susie, that so many parents get divorced when their kids move out because they weren't paying attention to each other. And I also see it just looking at like old neighbors and family friends. I see a lot of couples, in their 50s, and like they want their kids to keep living with them. Like their grown kids are living with them because once the kids move out, it's like, oh my God, who is this person I've been living with for however long? And I remember, so kind of when I learned that lesson, because as soon as Ethan was born, Jamie and I were both like, I love this thing. I love this being so much. It almost feels like it doesn't even compare to the love I thought I had for you. But, you know, you have to kind of go through this like transition of it's a different kind of love and you have to work for the love you have for your spouse. Right. And so after I was kind of learning about that, listening to the podcast, I remember having this conversation with Jamie and saying we have to like put our marriage first before the kid, and he's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so we've actually put a lot of effort and had a lot of communication around that fact, but it doesn't come naturally.
No, let me tell you how I frame that. When you have a baby, and this is my drum, I beat this like crazy, and our kids were mad at times because they're like, you love him more than you love me, and I'd be like, yep. When you have a baby, it's an unreasonable love. We love our children unreasonably. It is without thought. It is without boundary. It is unreasonable. It makes no sense at times.
Yep.
We know why we fell in love with our spouse. We know why they bug the crap out of us. So it's a reasonable love. It makes sense, and we have to work at it. It is not hard to love a 2-year-old. Now, this is part of why I tell my...
no, it's very hard to love a 2-year-old.
Yes, that is true. But it's why I tell my parents of teens, take that picture of your toddler and put it on your fridge when that toddler becomes a teen. But it's that unreasonableness. And you're right, Jess, you said that so well. You have to work at it. And the fact that you identified that when your kids are young is huge, because kids take up time. You can say to your spouse, hey, wait, I got to take care of this baby. Just like you say to your first kid, hey, wait, I got to take care of Lucy because Nathan has to wait because Lucy's screaming. And so you have to have those times that you carve out and spend time with your spouse. A lot of millennials, because they've had this time as a couple together, they kind of shift now their focus and they forget to tend their marriage. And that's a huge thing. All right, I'm going to call out One Click Lindsay and Felicia, who I know we've hit 200 attendees. Woohoo! Please click on Bethany, Jet. If you are a millennial, even if you're not a parent, click on, because Susie, that's huge.
While we're waiting for somebody else to click on, I wanted to comment that I don't know if this is a millennial thing or if it's a generation thing, but I mean, it occurred to me to have this conversation with my husband about we need to prioritize our marriage over our kids. Because I was listening to these podcasts and like focusing on personal development in my marriage. I mean, how many, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but how many couples are actually seeking out information to improve their relationships?
Wow. Yeah, that is so true. I'd like to jump in here, being male on this call and being, What happened is my wife and I, we chose not to have children, but I've raised 3 millennials from childhood to adulthood. And I can tell you from the father, the uncle kind of perspective is this. I really took a lot of pride in raising my nephew and my 2 stepkids, because to me it was a really important job to take a little bit of what my father taught me and then let go of so much of the crap that didn't matter and really be there for them so that they could be greater than me. And I really enjoyed that role. It was something that I looked at. Now my father, he was a different kind of father because he was always there. He wasn't hugging and telling me he was proud, but he was always there. And that made a difference in my life. And a lot of people don't know this, but the boomer parenting was separate. This is the first generation to really bring it together. So, hi, Stacy. Can we bring her in?
Well, she's not. She's just a call in. I'm going to use the word team parenting versus co-parenting. Here comes Stacy. Does that help? So team parenting today. Stacy. Stacy and Gooden. Terrific. And that's great.
Hi,
Thanks for adding that.
Hi, Stacy. How are you? Thanks for oh my God. I should have looked in the mirror.
You look fab, darling. You look fab.
I thought this was such an interesting conversation. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to tune in because and chime in, because my husband and I, we were having this discussion the other day about choosing our relationship first, our marriage first before our kids. And I said to him, I said, at some point they're going to get older and they're going to move on out. But more importantly, I think it's so essential for kids to see healthy relationships. It allows them to perform better at school. It allows them to just be happier kids in general. So, yeah, more secure with who they are, more secure about knowing what a healthy relationship looks like. So, I mean, my husband and I, we go back and forth on whether or not we should have like vacations without the kids and things like that. We're not at that point. However, what we've been doing is scheduling time for us. You know, even if it's like at the end of the night when the kids are in bed and we're just hanging out, watching a movie, we just have that time for ourselves. We don't really.
Okay, I'm jumping in here. I'm so jumping in here. This is my wheelhouse. And Stacey Ann, you can keep commenting, but this is what I do for a living. 32 years of marriage, 25 years of doing this. Kudos to you for taking time to be with your husband at the end of the night.
That's awesome.
Make a date night. Every single couple who's married with kids should take at least 1 3-day weekend a year away. Here's why. Number one, it helps you reconnect. And it has to be 3 days. One, because you spend the first day exhausted. The second day you bicker because you're finally alone. The third day, you're finally having fun. So if you leave Friday and you sleep all night, Saturday you bicker, Sunday you come home, that's finally fun day. So I always say, take the third day, come home the next day because you're finally having fun. It's so hard to do, but if you don't do it, years will go by. And so take care of your marriage. I mean, you could see me just, I got to say something. But kudos to you for taking time, 15-minute walk, but make time to stay together. So how do you spend time at the end of the day together?
For starters, we have this conversation. We also have like this YouTube channel, so we always do these little like chats. And I said, okay, let's talk about how we schedule. Like we legit schedule time. So we're like, he'll text me, how about tomorrow night at 10 o'clock? And it's like, okay, we got that plan in motion. We get the kids dressed, ready to go. It's usually like a Saturday night or even a Sunday night where we can get the kids to bed at least at like 9 o'clock. We get a movie going. We have our couple time. So we've been doing that like maybe once or twice a month. It really does depend. And then throughout the week, it's like I'm on call. Like my cell phone will go off. How about tonight? Okay. So I mean, it seems so contrived, but it's worked for us.
It's not.
Especially with the last.
You have to schedule it.
I have a 2-year-old. We have a 2-year-old.
It's so true.
And we also have a 5-year-old who's in kindergarten. So you can imagine things get a little crazy, especially with my daughter with her schoolwork nowadays. It's ridiculous.
Sure.
I quit my job
a
few months ago. Quit my job a few months ago to spend more time with the family because I found that my marriage was suffering. So I was like, you know what? It's a huge thing to do. I've been in my industry for over like 10 years. And it's a huge step. I never thought I would walk away from this job that I love so much. But then I'm thinking, well, I love my family. I love my husband even more. And I could see that we were suffering, and I felt like another few years of this, we probably would disconnect and we wouldn't be together. I honestly thought that. And ever since.
A lot of times, Stacey, I'll tell people to ask themselves this question. What are the things only I can do? Like you can, and again, if you can financially swing it, you can go back to work, but only you can be his wife, only you can be their mom. Exactly. And it's really hard. I think women face this choice more than men. Yeah. And so kudos to you for making it. I had a client recently that the big assignment was to make their kids, and your kids are young for this, do the dishes. So they could take a walk after dinner just to have those 15 minutes of reconnection. Mm-hmm. 32 years later in marriage, we've worked hard. We've earned our marriage. And we did make sacrifices. And I think you have to be able to say, again, I made the hard choice to quit my job. The only person who has to feel good about that is you and your spouse.
Yes.
And a lot of, what?
Don't get me wrong. If he's the breadwinner, so mathematically it just made sense. For you to quit.
I did that.
Yeah, I think, he would have no problems quitting his job if need be, where I bring home the bacon and whatnot. But either way, it was just freeing up our time a little bit and allowing for us to both be parents, because I felt like I was getting home at close to midnight. My kids were not sleeping through the night, especially my younger one. He wouldn't sleep through the night.
Right.
Wow.
And then in the morning, it's like, hurry up, go. We got to drop you off. We got to go. It was just kind of thing. And it was just like we weren't living. We were going through the motions, but we weren't living and enjoying.
There's a hand.
Yeah.
When you said, he makes more money, so it made more sense to leave. I think the one big reason that millennial parents are different is another fact that women are making a lot more money nowadays. A big reason my husband is a lot more involved with kids, even more now than even when Nathan was a baby, is because I am starting to make a lot more money in my business. So we thought, hey, it kind of makes more sense for me to put in some more hours at work. And we kind of balance each other out because he takes on some clients as a lawyer on the side. So, we both are kind of making around the same amount, but we also look at it and like, okay, if Jessica goes to work a little bit more, her business could make way more money, whereas he would put in a couple more hours at an hourly wage. And so I think now that women are making a little bit more money, it's couples nowadays are looking at, okay, what makes more sense? Who should be home?
Exactly.
Right. It's very strategic, and I love that. I think the thing people don't tell you is relationships are hard work.
It is.
They are.
And making money is hard work. And I think for a lot of millennials, they watch their parents split up. Yeah. They watch their parents give up on hard work, and income work became what people invested in. And so I want to applaud you. I gave up my job to be at home because I had the luxury of doing that. And, it was hard. It was a sacrifice. And I think it was worth it. Here I am later in life restarting a career, and I wouldn't trade it. I've said this to a lot of millennials, who have to make the choice you've made. I don't ever regret the time I didn't spend with my kids. And they're grown now and they're gone. But I do think people don't. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that they're young ones, and I've managed to find a balance. It's not perfect, but if for any reason my boss decides to call me to fill in, I can still go and fill in at work. So, while I quit my full-time job, once in a while, I'll fill in for the morning meteorologist or something like that, and I'm able to just kind of keep things fresh so that when I'm ready to go back full-time, if I'm ever ready, I won't have such a difficult time. And having a blog and writing for a bunch of sites and working from home has allowed me that opportunity to still kind of bring in some income and keep my resume current. So
that's actually a huge piece of millennials as parents. I think Jessica has a huge ability to work from home, or she now has a remote office. You guys have the opportunity to work virtually. I want to offer, I know Brad's going to come back in here, but if anybody else wants to jump on video, please pop in the chat room you want to come on, and we'll let you in, because I don't want people not to come in because we haven't kicked somebody out. Second Course Media said Xers are left out all the time. Actually, Xers we talked a lot about last night. Brad and I are technically cuspers and Xers. Xers are just angry, and the reality is they didn't get a lot of time in the media. And then Felicia says it's a good tip about a walk after dinner, having the older kids to clean up. Felicia, my deal was I made dinner, you're doing dishes. Once my kids were 10, they were doing dishes. Once they were 14, they were doing laundry. So anybody else want to jump in? I'm an Xer. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Gen X, we apologize, but Gen X, you did not raise millennials. That's why you're not being excluded. It's just you've been skipped over. You're actually raising Generation Z, and they're coming up right now, which we can talk about later on maybe another Blabcast. But the reality is that Susie just said you're angry. It's really cynicism, because you're the in-between generation that were the first latchkey kids. You were raised sort of in this
middle stepchild
dystopia that began. And all of a sudden you're in developments, and you're expected to have all these things happen. And now in the corporations, you're being stepped over like dead bodies to get to millennials, and you're frustrated. I get it. You're angry and frustrated. I've written a couple of blogs about it on, you got to take your power back. You got to stand up. You're just that middle Jan Brady of the generations, and it sucks. I know it sucks. I hear it, but guess what? You guys have more power than you think, and your day is coming. Trust me, because we're retiring soon.
Well, and honestly, I'm a cusper, and the only reason I'm raising a millennial is because I had a kid at 20. 22. So it really, I'm in the edge. I mean, Brad and I chatted about the fact that we listened to grunge music. We weren't like a boomer. I think of as my mother, and so the boomer generation's really, really huge. But let's talk a little bit more. The Xers got the crap of the stick. Latchkey kids are now the internet screen kids.
Yeah.
Felicia says it made us stronger. Boomers and millennials are navel gazers. Well, I think you should start a Gen Xers are the Jan Brady's of the world Blab series. Other thoughts?
Actually, Google. Is Gen X the Jan Brady of the generations? I wrote a blog about that, so you'll find it. It's a lot of fun.
So Ace Music says old school parenting was this: kids are first. Now that needs to change. So here's what I'm going to ask the two of you who are on, Jessica and Stacey Ann. One of the blabs we talked about child-centric parenting, and that boomers raised their kids as the center of the home, the center of their world. And while that created very confident kids, it also created a bit of insecurity in that there wasn't a kind of a force bigger than yourself. And so we kind of want to move away from that, where kids have a voice, but they also have parameters and boundaries. Do you feel as parents that you have a little bit more of a sense of balance there, where your kids are important, but they also have parameters? And they're not the center of your home.
That is tough. I find that's a huge hurdle because I do want my kids to be very outspoken. I want them to be able to voice their opinions and speak their minds and feel comfortable doing that, and not grow up with this kind of like fear, like, oh my gosh, I can't say anything because I'm going to get in trouble. My husband and I, with our 5-year-old especially, because our 2-year-old is still kind of young, we've managed to kind of set those boundaries, so she knows. And we do that just by, a simple like, look, these are the rules and you have to adhere to them. Otherwise there will be consequences. So we've had that balance where we've been able to just take on that role with her of, okay, you can say or do X, Y, Z, but here is where we draw the line. And it's a work in progress. Is it perfect? No. But I don't want her to grow up with that same feeling I had growing up, where it was just like, okay, I can't really say anything. I kind of have to do and just go, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you were raised more by classic boomer, by more of a, you were not raised by the classic boomer. You were raised more with a don't say, don't be disrespectful kind of parent.
I'm from the islands. I'm Jamaican. So I think it's I don't know if it's
yeah.
But growing up here in the States, of course I have friends and, they were raised a certain way. And I've seen a lot of how other, families run their households, and even with my children, how other friends that they have, how their parents are. And I just, I get a sense of there's a lot of like that permissive kind of thing. Then we have the chopper moms and things like that. I'm just trying to find a nice, healthy balance. That's all I'm trying. And it's not going to be perfect, but we try.
Stacey, my wife's from Haiti, so I totally get that. From being from the Caribbean, you get that strict way of no disrespect and things like that. So, and we created a blend for my wife's nephew, Sebastian, where he had that strict upbringing, but he also had a little of the American side of, okay, you have to earn your fun. So I understand.
That's really different. My dad was from India, so very patriarchal. So there was things we could say, but we had to be very respectful. I raised my kids to, speak their mind, and there was that you had to have a level of respect. But I'll never forget my mom saying, "I can't believe you let your kids talk to you that way." And they got away because I wanted them to be able to speak their mind, and so they did. Jessica, what about you?
It's kind of interesting. I'd be really curious. I wish my dad wasn't in Cancun right now, because I would be very curious to bring him on and see what his perspective is. For those of you who don't know, my dad is also my business coach. We all work together. So anyway, I'd be curious to see what his perspective is of his parenting, because I'm a twin, and my twin sister and I are the youngest of 4 kids. So
and the only girl.
Is there something beeping? That's not here.
Yeah, somebody's beeping in the background.
That's not here, is it? So
a truck backing up.
And by my personality, I've always been kind of a loudmouth. Like, my parents didn't need to give me the spotlight. I took it without being offered. So it was like, I think growing up, they were trying to like make me talk less. It wasn't them saying, oh, they didn't. So I think maybe they weren't as maybe different kinds of boomer parents. I'm not really sure, but I never felt like I was kind of given that spotlight in a very special way. I just feel like I took it without being offered.
Yeah. Is that Anthony?
Hey guys, how you doing?
So I lost. Hey Ace, hold on. Stacy, I lost you somehow. I'm sorry. But thanks for joining us, Stacy. Wait, hold on. Stacy, I lost you somehow. Thanks for popping in and sharing. Don't jump off the air. But welcome, Ace. Or Anthony, what do you go by?
Thank you so much.
Anthony, thanks for joining us.
A couple of environmental things. I'm at an airport. I'm delayed, and if there's background noise, I apologize. So
that's fine.
My phone, so I'm a better.
I'm a speaker too.
So a couple things. By the way, great blab. By the way, Susie,
me too.
Thank you so much. Really awesome blab.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's actually Brad whose idea this was. So
a couple points. Being a father of 4 boys, 15, 19, 22, and 24, I kind of span the millennials. I don't know, you guys all call them different labels, but the one thing I've learned in being married 20 years and then going through a divorce, right, and then being outside the marriage, I've learned so much about connection with my kids that I didn't have while I was married. So for those of you millennials that are going through the challenges of, hey, listen, the 2-year-old, the 4-year-old, the diapers, the milk, be connected to them, but remember, don't lose who you are. A lot of us parents lose who we are because we give ourselves to our kids, and that's the old school thinking. But the point the real message I want to leave with you guys is that don't ever underestimate the value of your actions, because your actions speak volumes, and your kids are going to learn from all the things you do, not from what you say, but from what you do. And I'm learning that now with my 15-year-old because he sees me a lot more. My others have moved on, but just it's the things that they learn that you don't say that they learn the most from. And I'm learning that, very powerful lesson, especially with my young one. And I think this is a great forum. And if us, 51-year-old parents could pass things on to millennial parents and what we went through, I think the value of your actions should never be underestimated. So that's really all I wanted to say. Hopefully that was valuable. Great blab, guys. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the opportunity of hanging out with you guys.
No, it's great information. It's great information. And I feel like, that whole not losing yourself, because we did as boomer parents, and then it's, either your marriage or personhood. So thank you. Godspeed on your travels.
I'll hop out and free up the seat.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi, great blab topic, and I think Anthony just really encapsulated a huge element, and I think the modeling piece is a critical one that spans generations, because I don't even know what the heck I am. I don't think I fit into those categories in any way, shape, or form other than a chronological, like the school age. You're going to migrate through the school system based upon your age, and that's just the identifier, because I'm an amalgam of all of them. With the parent of a teen, I've got a 14-year-old, and if you click my profile, I'm an advocate for keeping kids safe, because I think that our families have been completely compromised, and children are kind of the byproduct of not knowing what to do with them. In the past, parenting was a responsibility, and there was a transition that the parenting is now a friend. Your child is a friend. And with that friendship, you lose what I think is foundational during the child rearing ages. Our goal is we've got 8 to 10 years to speak into these child's lives, that they're going to be out on their own without us for another 50. And what are we doing to develop resiliency in those children? And did you want me to pause, Susie? Oh, okay, sorry. What are we doing to develop resiliency with these kids? And with the advent of the internet and what millennials grew up on the internet, now we have something that is distracting from what I call that goal of resiliency.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head, because even in the military, they're finding that millennials were dropping out because they couldn't handle getting yelled at. So they've had to adjust how they do things. So it's very interesting what you just said. I think they're waking up and becoming more resilient than we think. It's just a different type of resilience. They have all these tools at their fingertips to deal with their emotions. When I was growing up, my father was like, you need to suck it up. that.
So
I'm
there
was no family therapy. There was no dealing with.
Can you
yeah, go ahead.
You explain to me what you mean by you say they have other, I think, a new way of dealing with resiliency. What does that mean to you? Did I lose you?
We might have lost Brad. He's calling back in. I can answer that.
No,
so resiliency, they were not required. They were not required to be resilient. So example, like we were told, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, figure it out, suck it up. Our kids were told, oh, did you hurt yourself? Oh, are you sad you didn't get picked? We'll find you a new team. Oh, you didn't get invited to the party? We'll buy you your moon bounce. Exactly. My kids got trophies for participating. I cannot tell you when we were moving, we actually moved a number of times in my kids' lives, and the trophies on their shelves that they got for participating twice a year. So fall and spring sports, 2 trophies every year had no value. They didn't have meaning because they got them. They expected to get them. The ones that mattered was when their team went further and they got a real trophy because they earned it. So they didn't learn resiliency, that failure, that disappointment, the pain, and how to feel through it, how to go on. And so resiliency wasn't part of their skill set. Go ahead, Brad.
So Brad, you were commenting that they have a new form of resiliency based upon things being at their fingertips. I want to, if you can expand on that for me.
I don't think they have a form of resiliency. Brad, you were saying they do?
I think they're waking up. I think they're starting to realize, they don't have resiliency, and they're looking around for it. Life is hitting us just like anybody else hits us. And I think that's the one thing missing from millennials. And for those of you who don't understand maybe what we mean by resilience, what it means is if life really kicks you and knocks you on your butt, are you emotionally capable of dealing with it? And that's what we are as boomers very concerned about, the millennial generation. Are you ready for, let's say, complete loss economically, or losing a child, or losing your parents? And I don't mean to generalize. I know a lot of you can do that, but what is going to happen when that really does happen? Because it happens to all of us. We lose our parents.
Do they have hope? Do they have hope?
Do they have hope?
Do the millennials have hope without resiliency? Or are they boomerang?
All right, so I'm gonna pause you on that because we've got a couple comments about the trophy model. Cool dude said, I don't like the trophy models. Kids should have fun and be kids. Anthony says, what are the challenges I see are instant gratification in this generation? They have little coping skills and little to no resiliency.
I agree.
Chuck says, they missed all the wonder of social acceptance and the lack thereof. Matt says, I hate the sports model. So there is this idea of, and this plays into resiliency and hope. When you're handed things over and over again, here's the problem. Internally, you don't deserve it. You haven't earned it. And there is this internal shame, this internal doubt that comes over you. And it's different from the shame or the lack of shame that Brad said, where they have no shame in terms of, I'm going to put it out there. It's that internal lack of confidence that says, I really didn't earn this. I don't really, quote unquote, deserve this in the realm of value. And so it does undermine their sense of confidence, their sense of self. And that is a dilemma for the millennial generation because they didn't go through the hard knocks.
So
do they have hope? As they boomerang home? I don't know. Go ahead, Ryan.
So can you attach this to, in the boomer generation, it was almost obligatory that you go through a college experience to establish value in a society. There was a heavy burden on the educational experience, particularly collegial. Now, because the collegiate experience is a liability, because you're going into significant debt for millennials, they're coming out and the job market has gone upside down, and the prospects of the job market recovering are so slim. That's where I go to, what hope do the millennials have without having this resiliency piece? Now, what do we see this future going to be with this, to your topic, boomers and millennials understanding each other? What's going to happen to our legacy generation?
It's going to be rough. That's all.
Well, if you're depending on Social Security, hang that one up.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think will happen. they have to. The one great thing about millennials is they outthink us. Right now, there are millennials who are buying buildings through crowdfunding. In the past, you had to wait and try and accumulate money and things like this. So millennials are using crowdfunding to do the things they want to do. And the other thing is they're also living together in groups. Some of them will get one big apartment with 7 rooms and they live together. So they're trying to figure it out on their own, but they're not using the boomer model at all.
Also, and aren't they also
go ahead,
suggesting a $15 an hour minimum wage and a free college education and a dissolution of college debt? I mean,
okay, so I'm going to weigh in on I'm going to weigh in on this with 3 millennials through college and having paid for that college education. College education for boomers was a prerequisite. We believed in the union card, the degrees, the need for those. Millennials college education is today, and I say this as a holder of 2 degrees, thinking about a doctorate. The idea of college is really becoming irrelevant. We don't teach a liberal education, a liberal arts education where kids learn to think. The way the world is changing, those 4 years are really an extension of, in my humble opinion, of high school. And so kids are going to college emotionally so much younger that it just becomes an extension, and a very expensive extension, to the point where we'd almost do better to ask them to do civil service of some sort and do some extra learning or get in some skills. So I think the idea of the college debt is ridiculous. I think kids need to learn they need the time to develop, because you don't develop abstract thinking skills, physiological development and biological development. So college is a hard thing, and you have boomerang kids coming home because of this college debt that at one level is very unnecessary. So do they have hope? I think we need to reconstruct their growing up, because if we're looking, and this is a bold statement, if we're really owning that the world has changed, college, higher education as we know it is a modern era construct. The postmodern world is a different one. Our kids, as Brad says, think faster, think different. We need to reconstruct the world. Mm-hmm.
Can you
call in Matt.
Can you define what you mean when you say the postmodern world? Is that moral relativism? Is that what you're suggesting?
Postmodern. Go ahead, Brad.
No. We have moved past the Industrial Revolution, where hierarchy and structure and age and experience are how you get ahead. Now it is skill set and what you bring to the table. So that's the physical part of it. The mental part of it is we have a generation, or the psychographic part of it is we have a generation that's been raised completely differently to care about the world and look down on the individual who has gotten ahead through that military rote, that attitude that I'm going to crush everybody to get ahead. And now it's a more of a, for lack of a better word, sort of a touchy-feely, collaborative, hey, this is awesome, let's do this all together. It sounds a little like kumbaya to a boomer, but the reality is that's what they were raised in. And I think in some cases, it is a much better, more sensitive way to work. It depends on what environment you're working in.
The other thing for postmodern, for you, Ryan, just to know is it is the difference between an absolute truth, moral and ethical, right and wrong, black and white, hierarchy, and a much more flattened world. So, I mean, you have to kind of Google that, but it is a whole different world that our kids haven't been raised in. So, hi, Matt.
So is that abandoning of logic? If everything is morally relative, then we're escaping logical truths.
No, it's not. It's not abandoning of logic. It is a distancing from. And it started in the 70s. You got to look at with architecture. It started then. It is a shift from one bottom line, a shift from hierarchy, but it absolutely is not an abandoning of logic. So hold on one second, Ryan. Matt, are you here?
I'm here. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I see, Matt.
How's it going?
Hey.
Yeah, well.
So Matt, you're a millennial, right?
Good.
I'm a millennial, 22.
Okay, talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't disagree with anything that you're saying when it comes to generalizing our whole generation. I
sure.
do. But I do think when these conversations happen, many people, I'm not saying you guys, but maybe people listening, consider that it's everyone. It's all the millennials. And there are, I think the reason that millennials are a very special generation is because there's some diamonds in the rough who are actually trying to do some big things in their life. And I think those diamonds in the rough are going to be the reason that millennial, like this sounds like this. I'm not talking about me, but just people that are doing big things, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk. I don't know if he's a millennial, but I think it's kind of young. Those are going to be people that are the future of the future, and they're going to raise people like them. And I think it's up to those people, the driven millennials, the people that really care about the future and care about humanity and care about education, real education, not college, real education, that is going to push the world forward. But I don't like the conversation that belittling millennials a little bit. When I know I'm only 22, but I've been through a fair amount with mental disorders, and there's things that I've experienced that you guys haven't experienced, that you've experienced, that I sure as hell haven't experienced. I don't like being put like in a basket with everyone, because Ryan can attest to this. Ryan, I've talked many times. I'm a fairly driven person, and I'm doing pretty big things, and there's people that I'm friends with that are just nothing talking about. I just don't like being put in a basket with everyone, because there's millennials that are doing really, really big stuff out there for a lot of them. So that's kind of what I wanted to say.
That's a good point, Matt, because that's where I was trying to put myself, is that that we don't fit necessarily the identifier. It's a way to put context around a group, and I agree with you. You are not part of that context. You're part of the 1% of the identification of that name. So, and I agree, there's people in your generation that are going to be the doers.
So here we have a couple questions online where Cool Dude said, and Matt, I do agree with you. I actually have 3 kids who are millennials, 30, 28, and 25, and our son is actually living in Israel volunteering. He's on a kind of volunteer NGO organization, and he's doing great things. And he looks at his dad, who kind of says, "Do you have a plan?" And says, "Yeah, my plan's to do this for now, and my needs are little, and we're good." So, but here's a couple things. So I think we have to be careful how we I don't want to ever sound judgmental, but we have to group people at least so we can talk about them in a way that is intelligent, but there's always outliers. So Cool Dude says, does Mark Zuckerberg care about people or raising money? I want, Matt, you to answer that, and then I want to go on to what Chuck said. So go ahead.
So it's going to be an unpopular opinion. I think he cares more about money than people, but in reality, it doesn't matter, because he's helping a lot of people. None of us have a conversation with Mark every day saying, "Hey, what do you do to help people?" No, we just see what Facebook does and what the Oculus is going to do. So, yes, he may care more about money than people. I don't know, but I don't think it matters. Because right now, yeah, that's my.
And I would agree. I think honestly, that's a illogical question that at some level is a rock and a hard place, because money matters. People matter. I mean, without money, we don't help third world countries. Without money, we can't end slavery, some things I care about. Without money, we don't advance technology. So I hope Mark Zuckerberg cares about money, as long as he uses his money wisely, and uses money for more than just capitalism.
Point, because money, people.
Wait, I don't want to get way off track. So hold on, Ryan. I want to ask Chuck next. Hold on. Chuck said, our experience has shown many have the credentials, so many have the credentials, but lack the ability to think on their own. So we gravitate towards seasoned citizens. It's easier to teach a seasoned citizen new technology than instilling the thought processes in some of the youngest. So I want you to answer this again, Matt, because it feels like he's saying that the young people of today don't think well. Chuck, do you want to jump in here and have a conversation? Okay. Ryan, do you mind popping off? Chuck, do you want to jump in here? There we go. Thanks, Ryan. You can pop back on when we're done with this little conversation.
Ryan, Chuck.
Chuck and Matt. So go ahead, Chuck. Why don't you explain your question to Matt, and Matt, you answer.
Well, again, we're all living certain isolated conditions. In some of the industries that I am involved with, we always want to give opportunities to young people. One of the problems we have observed is there's a list of them, but I lump it into the ability to think for themselves. 30 years ago in the restaurant business, all employees were totally empowered to make total decisions with the customers at all times and never talk to management. That generation grew up to be, because I've kept track of many of our employees, have grown up to be pretty balanced people. Today, people come to work with huge expectations and no willingness to do anything. Now, again, Matt I loved when Ryan said Matt is in the 1%. And most of the people in Blab are in the 1%, by the way, of thought. I mean, we're not talking to the masses here because the masses aren't on Blab. But so we've gravitated in some of our businesses to hire what I call seasoned citizens. We don't read resumes. Resumes are a piece of crap. We sit down and have interviews. My 40-year-old son was just hired by a sub-governmental agency who also refuses to accept interviews, resumes or online applications. They called him in. He met with the board of directors, and they hired him as an outside service person, okay? And it's that many of us have sensed this to be true. It's not negative. It's just and I'm not a geek. I'm a technical person, but I have found that people in my neighborhood, average age 70, take to high tech quicker than a 25 or 30-year-old will take to the ability to learn or have an open mind enough to learn how to think, meaning to be empowered to be responsible for their own actions. Okay. And I said an awful lot probably doesn't mean a bit of crap. So again, just like out at the golf course, we've tried all ages of people, and guess what? Give me, a retired sergeant to be the starter, because they know how to engage with people. They find it they may be curmudgeons, right, but they blend into it. It's not that they knew a lot of the business, but they own themselves. In other words, they have a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'll shut up.
Let me jump in here, Chuck. We've done a whole series about why boomers are the way they are. And we were taught out of fear to get in there, get your work done, shut the hell up, and do your job. That's how we were taught. But a new generation was raised, millennials, and even a little bit of Gen X. Hey, what do you think, Billy? What do you think? What do you want to do today? So there's sort of a very big difference and a shift in, do I have to prove myself or do I not have to prove myself? So in the corporate world, which is where I work in, a lot of times the difference is this. Boomers have been taught, okay, I have a job. I'm going to work my tail off so I can get a raise so everybody can see how good I am. Millennials have a different attitude. They're like, do me a favor, pay me what I'm worth, and then I'll show you what I can do. And that's the opposite. That's a complete opposite. And it's just how they were trained in childhood. There's only, and I don't want to generalize, that is the one thing we got to talk about today is we can't fit everybody into boxes. There is a 1% of millennials that are business owners who act exactly like boomers. And then there are boomers who act like millennials. I've met quite a few of those as well.
I have to ask everybody.
It's just behavior.
I have to ask a simple question. Since I've engaged in social media the last 11 years, and now with this wonderful streaming and things like Blab, and discussions of boomers and millennials, because we discuss market, who are we going to market to? Are we going to market to this? I've always felt bad because my generation doesn't have a name. I'm not a baby boomer, and I'm not a depression baby. So has anybody in the great realm of social science come up with us idiots?
What year were you born?
Before 1943.
Brad?
Yeah, you're the sort of the in-between.
Yeah,
you're the Gen X.
I'm the gap.
You're the gap baby. There was a whole group, I never talk about this, of the traditionalists that were born during World War III. My mother was one of those, and they don't fit into any category. They're just like Gen X, and they're sitting there going, damn it.
And see, my parents, immigrants, but they still were their thought processes were formed during a period of upheaval in the world, depression, and so on. The depression never bothered my parents. My dad did what he wanted to do as long as he wanted to do it. I was born, then he goes off to war. I remember my dad coming home from World War II. And we grew up, his peer group and my peer group, the kids that I played with in school, we still talk. I mastermind, have some 50-year-old mastermind.
Okay, wait. I'm going to interrupt real quick because I want Chuck to finish what he's saying, but Matt has to run and wants to make one point before he eats lunch to run. So, Chuck, don't go anywhere.
I'm finished.
No.
Go ahead,
please
Matt.
Stay. This is brilliant, but go ahead, Matt. Say your 1 point, and Chuck, I want to give you a compliment from Anthony. So, Matt, say your point real quick.
So I totally understand that that we're you're just as generalizing, but not everyone is in like that bucket. But I would challenge you to, Chuck, when you talk about bringing people onto a team or whatnot, maybe have better hiring procedures to find those diamonds in the rough. And two, I think instead of just saying, hey, what can you do? Like ask. Just have a good. I think we focus on culture. Millennials are 100%, 1,000,000% about culture, but the culture could suck or it could be awesome. So that's up to the co-founders and the CEOs to make it awesome. That's kind of my thought.
Matt, I appreciate that, and I went to visit a place in Lake Geneva last month, and we were looking for people there, and a young lady who definitely is a millennial was a superstar, and it was just no question about there was an absolute mix there. So I agree with you. I'm not trying to make generalities, but I'm talking over time. I mean, if I had to interview 20 in this age group and 20 in the other age group, for our business, now again, it may have to do with the business, you say. Each business has its own unique need for employees and what you expect employees to do and what they expect you to do for them. So, I appreciate Matt. I'm not, obviously I have grandchildren who are millennials. I got some great grandchildren coming along. I don't know what they're going to be called. What are they going to be called?
Generation Alpha.
They're going to be called digital natives and cloud kids. Okay, Matt, thanks so much.
They're not allowed. They're not allowed to digitize.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. Okay, so don't go anywhere yet, Chuck. I want to share something with you, and then, so Anthony says, Chuck, I think you need to start your own blab and speak to millennials. Your words resonate with them. Thanks for that, Ace. I also want to say we're 15 minutes over our time, and somebody posted this question. This blab session deserves a part 2. We have over 550 people on the blab. Please schedule a sequel. Brad, are you open? I've got a client that I got to get to. Are you open to doing a part 2?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to at this point because we've had such a great great time. And we still have people coming in. We have 556.
We do, and Chuck, you're my hero. I am so excited to see somebody your age. I mean this very respectfully. On Blab, thinking like you're thinking. I'm going to find you on every social media channel I'm on and follow you. I'm so impressed. I love it. So here's what I want to ask you as we're finishing. And then, Brad, I'm going to ask you to close us out. If you have something to say to the generations beyond you, which would include Brad and me, everybody on our Blab, I would imagine, what are a few words of wisdom that you would give us as we move forward in this whole idea of becoming?
Learn to become autonomous. Was that question to Brad or to me?
No, it was to you, Chuck.
Okay. Learn to become autonomous. When I was 17, I read a book. My definite major purpose in life was 2 items: to be autonomous and to help others. Those have been the only 2 paths I've taken. I have, I walk a different walk, talk a different talk, and, follow a different drummer. But I am excited about Blab, and I tried to schedule a Blab just a few minutes. I filled in the application, but there was no submit button. Is it at the bottom or somewhere?
It's at the top.
I filled in the time.
You got to go on Twitter first.
No, I am on Twitter.
So you go up to your new thing, and it says schedule a new Blab.
Yes. Okay.
And then you put the name in. You put in your few things. You do title, right? Then you do your time.
Right.
And then at the bottom, is there a submit? Yeah, then there's a submit.
Well, I must have to make my screen larger then because I kept. Okay,
yeah,
thank you very much, and you guys. I mean, I followed you in the past, and what you're doing is wonderful, and I agree you should have another one.
Okay, so be autonomous and pursue meaning.
Help others.
Help others.
And that's the only. When in my life, whenever I've helped others without any preconceived outcome, the outcomes were magnanimous to my favor. So therefore, you have to own something to give it. I own my own time. Therefore, I can give it. I make sole decisions about what happens in our life, other than a heart attack. I didn't have that decision. It happened, okay? So that's the way my wife and I raised our children. Our children were never told what to do. They were given the opportunity to read things. And some did very well as far as socially accepted. Others have had struggles. And it was never our job to pull them out of their struggles. It was only their job to pull them out of their struggles. So anyway, that's,
brilliant,
that's the way
brilliant wisdom.
Thank you.
I think we should end on that, Brad.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, stay posted, stay tuned, follow Brad and I. We'll make sure we post another one. Thank you for a fabulous discussion. I don't know if I could be happier, Brad.
This has been a fantastic Blabcast. I want to thank everybody for coming in. I cannot believe how many people came in. We had great interaction. And I think this is not only a hot topic, but a relevant topic. You know, Susie and I have done 9 of these so far, 10 actually. And if you follow all of them, you'll see there's a stream of thought. But this was the one that seemed to resonate. This is the one that really kicked it up a notch, I think. Anyway, Susie, what do you think?
I think it was fun. We'll do a part 2. Thanks for asking for it. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you.